When I would be the champion.
Now, this is our, I would say, person to get more respect for yoga. Because she handles this type of persons, yes.
Are we sorted?
Lynn, everything is okay?
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Forget everything I said.
Yes.
Right, okay. For the last 10 or 15 years, I'm hailing from the University of Reading, Ken Reagan from the State University of New York, and now assisted by Tamal Biswas, who's a PhD student. I've been interested in the performance of human chess players and predicting what moves they might make and profiling them in some general sense. And this is kind of, as you'll see, a review paper, not specific new research results. But first let me just define these terms. Performance of players, we want to measure, not in ELO terms, their results, but benchmarking their move decisions against some sort of persistent or absolute standard. And that has to be, that has to be basically a chess engine coming to some view about the moves made. We want to predict what moves might be made in the future, what's the probability of moves being made. And in a general sense, we'd like to profile players. So, you know, it's generally thought that Lasker was the first world champion to play the opponent, as well as chess itself. John Nunn has been quite articulate on that. So how could you quantify that in sort of more precise terms? Why are we reviewing this domain now? Well, we've learned quite a lot in the last 15 years. Mathematics was also involved in the early 2000s. But the real driver is that the success of the ICCA, fostering computer chess, has actually created a problem in that people are increasingly getting information at the board when they shouldn't be, and cheating. That's one form of cheating. More than one toilet has been trashed in the cause of cheating or anti-cheating, and we've recently had the cases of Ivanov in 2012-14, and this year Nikolitz, and the rather unfounded accusations apparently against Sandu in the Women's European Championship just recently. So if we sort of are associated with creating a problem, perhaps we should be helping to solve it, and that's my sort of view. Of course, it's not just about doing the right statistics, it's about educating the public so they don't come to conclusions about whether people might be cheating or not, or what the probability is. Because you know, reputations are at stake, we want to guard those reputations. FIDE and the Association of Chess Professionals are now moving quite earnestly and spending serious money dealing with this problem. Ken Regan is their go-to man on the technical side. He's now dealing with one case a week. And he actually visited me 3 weeks ago. So he actually demonstrated what it takes to deal with one of these cases, and it takes hours. There's a lot of keystrokes involved, there's a lot of automation possible. We can clearly do better with the right systems underneath the processes that we need to do. But also, whatever we do, we need to communicate that with the interested parties, the stakeholders, and the public. So we need to build a sort of community of interest, and that means there must be a sort of shared language, shared standards, shared information, and so on. These are some of the stakeholders. If as a systems engineer you're proposing change in the way a system operates, then you should look at stakeholders, because you soon realise they don't all want the same things. For example, sponsors of chess and journalists do not want moves to be delayed 15 minutes on the internet. Whereas the chess players themselves understand that the risk of cheating is greater than the act of cheating, causes more damage, to paraphrase Nimzovich, and they do want a 15-minute delay on internet broadcasts. So here we are, those are some of the players. Not all of them are in chess. Any game where you can associate a value with a move based on search and static evaluation can be dealt with in this way. Managers of investment managers are interested in knowing whether the investment managers are doing well or not. For example, there's a recent theory that if you got married in the last 2 years or got divorced in the last 4, you're not going to perform as well as an investment manager as if that was not the case. Multi-choice assessment is a multi-billion industry, and it's clear from the work done here that you can get more information out of multi-choice assessment than just the linear score of the candidates. So what's this common language? We need to have shared concepts and terms, abbreviations, acronyms, so we're all talking the same language about the subject. And I'm not showing and making my contribution here. So you'll meet in this talk the assessed player, the benchmarking player, i.e. a chess engine, the dishonest player, the honest player, the reference player, and the calibrating player. We'll be looking at a data diagram next. It's clear we need information about chess events, players, games, positions, moves, evaluations of moves, and so on. And if we then come to say how do we assess a player over a period of time, there's a range of methods being proposed, as you can see here, and they use increasing amounts of information as we go along. And that means they get less and less understandable by the public. Fundamentally, what Ken's doing is acquiring basic chess data, and that's not trivial. He then has to run repeatable experiments, computational experiments, evaluating positions and then assessing players. And the chess community needs to get better processes for flagging suspected cheating and dealing with cases. They've even got to decide how open they want to be with the rest of us about the conclusions they come to. If you've never seen a Venn diagram before, the notation for doing entity relationship modeling, this might be a bit scary. But basically this sort of diagram is needed before you create a database in whatever technology you create it. So here you can see some of the things about which we're storing information. And this sort of xylophone hammer here, there's not standard notation, but it is mine, says that in an event there are a number of games. In a game there's a number of positions and so on. So that gives you a feel for whether you're putting your arms around the right information or not, and how it might be connected together in a database. So let's look at assessment methods using that information. As I said, we'll be using increasing amounts of information, but these methods get harder to understand for the public. What people commonly do is they say, oh look, that player is making the same choices as my chess engine. They must be being informed by my chess engine. Clearly they are cheating. That's not correct. And a slight variant of that is this chess player is choosing a move which has the same value as the one chosen by my chess engine. Maybe there's just two equivalent moves or something like that. So this is using very little information, but it's what people tend to do. And they tend to jump to conclusions. So we can do better than that. And we can look at what the chess engine would have chosen as a move and what the human chose, and look at the difference in the points evaluation, centipoint evaluation, after those choices. And this is what Matej did a decade ago. But what turns out there is that if you're 3 pawns up in chess games, so you're pretty likely to win. If you kind of concede 0.01 pawns, that's not a big deal. If the positions are drawn and you concede 0.01 pawns, that's a much bigger deal. So we shouldn't be comparing errors just in their sort of absolute terms, but there needs to be some scaling. Sorry about that. And this is a result Ken produced 4 years ago, which you've seen before in these conferences. That these are the absolute errors, and these are the scaled errors. So he's dividing by some factor like log of 1 plus the position, the absolute value of the position. And he gets a much flatter kind of line. So we should be comparing like things rather than unlike things by doing this scaling. But there is a kind of theory that what you're really losing if you choose something worse than the best move is you're losing the expected value of your game result. And we should be trying to turn these centipoint evaluations into probabilities of winning. And that actually also helps to combine the results of different engines together, which could be useful. These are some recent results by Ken and Tamal, and they show as we go down these curves, these players are getting better. And the main point to make here is that you don't tend to see these curves flattening out for the better players until you search deeper down the tree. So that's just the point they're making. They've also got some results about trying to use search evaluations at shallower depths as we go along. Okay, so the methods so far are being used by the anti-cheating committee, namely Ken Reagan himself, as screening methods. So if somebody doesn't look like they're picking the moves of the computer, they don't look like they've got a low average error, then they're screened out as not cheating. They seem to be sort of marching to their own drum. But it's clear that the first two methods, which were just about coincidence of choice with the engine, can easily be kind of evaded by a player by taking a move that's like a centipawn worse than the best move, if that sort of thing is available. So these are not good ways of coming to an ultimate decision about cheating. What we really want to do is consider all the possible moves that could have been chosen, and how likely was it that that best move would have been chosen. And Ken's method I've called SR here, statistical regression, frequentis method, classic statistical method, which basically comes to some single value conclusion about how good the chess player is looking. And my method, skilloscopy, uses the sort of relatively new Bayesian inference method, where you state what you believe about the player beforehand, which might be nothing, you don't have any information, and produces a distribution of how competent that player might, a probabilistic distribution. But these are technical differences. Basically, if you run these two methods long enough, they come to the same conclusion. As I said, Ken and Tamal are now considering how they could use not only the evaluations of moves at the end of the search tree, but evaluations of the moves at places along the search tree, shallower depths. These all use reference players. A reference player is basically a roulette wheel. There's a function, a probabilistic function, which uses a couple of parameters, C1, C2 maybe, looks at the moves available and decides what the share of the probability is for each move, and therefore scales those down to the actual probabilities. Both Ken and I are doing this with our methods. There is a sort of deeper modelling question, which is which function f is best. I chose one, I remember, about 10 years ago, and didn't think about it much after that. Ken has actually looked at about 4 different functions and come to a view of which probabilistic function f is best. So there's some modelling questions there. How many parameters do you need, and so on. Now, basically, you don't need to say how extreme a player's performance is relative to similar players by going back to ELO. But if you want to go back to ELO and tell the public, well, this player looks like they're playing ELO 2800 when they're a club player at ELO 2100, then you've got to kind of fit ELO in there somewhere. And the way I did it was to take all the known games between ELO players, like 2800 plus or minus 10, 2700 plus or minus 10, that sort of thing, and see what they look like as a sort of aggregated ELO player. And these are the kind of results. This is a Bayesian thing, so it's not a point, although that's the most likely figure, obviously. And because I've done that, there were a lot of draws in my games that I chose, and players who were constantly fighting to turn a draw into a win or stop it turning into a loss, tend to play better. So, so there's something about the ELO players I chose, the games I chose, and maybe you'd like to choose a different set of ELO players to calibrate the space. So what basically happens is you're a chess engine, benchmarking player, profiles an actual human player, analysing a set of their moves, comes to some conclusion about where they fit in the model space, and these two views are technically the same in the end. And then you say, well, how good is that player compared to similar players based on similar data? So you take a lot of random choices of data in the databases, do the same sums, there's a lot of computing involved. You've got a sort of backcloth against which you can position the performance of your actual player that you're looking at, and then you can decide how extreme their performance is. Okay? So why is this not a done deal? Well, first of all, the benchmarking engines continually improve. Ken has, I think, stuck with Rivka, version 2 or 3, I think, for some years, because he wants to have results that he can compare and accumulate. So there's no point switching to Stockfish or Komodo or whatever is the latest thing to win the competition. You've got to stick with an engine, whatever its demerits. But actually, there's an argument for using more than one chess engine. We like them to be independent in their behaviour, and we'd like to have some way of combining their evaluations. Okay, and so there are some issues there. Chess engines are, of course, fallible. You can even find games where both sides think they're winning. So there's some noise there, and that's why in those previous curves you saw the curves diving down, because the further we were searching down, the more we were taking out the errors of the chess engine itself. This is the really new stuff, not part of our paper. Ken and Tamal are saying, hey, if a move has been the best move for the search depths from, say, 10 ply down to 20 ply down, it's more likely to be picked than a move that suddenly emerges at level 20 that was hidden before that. So we should be able to use that information somewhere. It's not clear how. The profiling thing says we should be able to look at the styles of players. Are they strategists or are they tacticians? Are they playing pure chess or are they playing the opponent? What combination of those two things? Do they find it difficult to see hidden moves, like moving backwards? That sort of thing. The sort of thing that Kibitzers say about various players. That sort of thing could be looked at for profiling. Issue: these statistical methods are not easy to communicate to the public. You get the same problems with communicating stuff about climate change, even the weather forecast. Not today, but usually. Statistics and probability are relatively difficult things for people to hang on to unless they've had some training. And it's pretty clear that good results are not in themselves evidence of cheating. I think in the Sandu case, I haven't seen the detailed evidence yet. The opponents were not playing well. So it's more a case of the opponents losing than Sandu actually winning. Once you've got the points. And the ACC Anti-Cheating Committee do say, and this is a quote, good play is not in itself evidence of cheating. And so their investigation into Sandu case is not just about play, but about the behaviour of the people who brought allegations of cheating to the arbiter. Basically, there's a big opportunity to improve the system infrastructure that underpins all this. And this is something that Ken Reagan and I are talking about. So we want to refine that data model. I'm already on version 2, which will be in the post-conference paper. We'd like timing information about moves to be a standard part of the PGN. We'd like to build a database consistent with that data model. Because the one thing that's true is if you're going to separate processes, the data has to stand still in between. It should be in a fixed place, in a definitive form, for lots of people to use, and that's why you need a database. We have separate processes for these things. We want an application to support those processes. We could radically cut down the amount of keystroke work that Ken has to do, for example. And the whole system would obviously be a sort of web-facing GUI interface, and it would be used by a variety of players, from administrators of the system itself to analysts like Ken, other people with chess engines who could be trusted to run them under set conditions, and second source other people's work, and so on. Okay. So in summary then, we've learned a lot over 15 years. There's clearly a community of interest that we need to harmonise and support. There's urgency about this now because of the amount of work coming through to Ken. And so it's a good time to reflect on the sort of things I've talked about. And we can take this opportunity to other fields, including investment management. So I am prepared to talk to the men in the city, to quote Shakespeare, Richard II. So any billionaires out there, welcome to talk to me. Thank you very much. Questions? Sorry? No, we'll take questions.
Yes.
I'm done.
Okay, first time for question.
Yeah. There's an awful lot of work being done on detecting plagiarism in student essays.
Yeah.
Very sophisticated work involving extremely high-level statistics. They're absolutely terrible at actually detecting plagiarism. Has this actually been tested by asking players to actually cheat?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, because the plagiarism has been tested, and it's basically, it's not very good. It'd be very interesting to get players to intentionally cheat and intentionally not to cheat.
Yeah.
And be able to test it.
That's a good.
But it's the existence of the system that stops students from cheating in universities because they know it's being used, but
Yeah.
they have no idea how bad it is.
There was that case where Kasparov was asked to pick out which game was the actual computer rather than the human, and he did it by noting that all the humans made mistakes that the computer would not make, but he didn't pick out the computer on a sort of positive basis. But we could talk about plagiarism over lunch. Yeah, sure. I've got issues with that as well. Yeah. It's poor, especially Turnitin. It's really poor. Hi, Matthew.
I'm just curious, do you think it would be applicable to poker as well? It's very important problem there.
I think you have to talk to Ryan's colleagues at the University of Alberta. But as I say, if you can put a value on the position after a move based on forward search and static evaluation, then yes, it could. Ryan, where are you? Not here? Oh, there you are. It's not commenting.
You would speak to my colleagues.
Hmm?
You would have to speak to my
Yeah,
colleagues.
yeah. Good question. Okay.
ICGA might play a leading role in solving the cheating problem. May it be possible that we offer courses that lead to a certificate?
Yeah.
People are cheat detectors or investigators, and would tournament organizers be willing to pay for people to come to their tournament?
Well, I think there's real money at stake. You know, I mean, the sponsors are going to walk away from chess if they don't like, you know, what players are doing or there's doubts about it, in the same way as they could walk away from athletics or cycling, you know. And once the integrity of the domain, the game domain, the sports domain has gone, then the money's gone. So there's definitely financial risk. And the question is, what's the best way of investing to protect the current sponsorship levels? So I think it's possible. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you detect that
that shows whether Deep Blue was cheating against Kasparov in '97.
Are we talking about the same position? I don't know. Well, the one that Kasparov was not happy about.
Yes, about the same.
Well, yeah. I think there's a problem about chess engines benchmarking other chess engines. I think there's real issues about that. I mean, I've half thought that Ken should benchmark the play of this World Computer Chess Championship using the engines that it uses, yeah? But, I mean, what are you measuring there? Are you measuring the error of the benchmarking engine, or are you measuring the error of the engine that's being assessed? It's not obvious. I think both sides trusted Ken Thompson at the time. Ken Thompson was happy that there had been no interference by IBM with Deep Blue. That's all I know, all I remember. Matesh again?
I would just like to comment on this. I think there's no data available. It was just a single move. I know exactly which move we had in mind. It's the bishop e4.
Well, there's a big log file you could look at.
Yeah, it's just one move. And usually when cheating is, when the tactic cheating is incorporated in practice, we have much more data available about a single player. And there is one problem, because players don't need to cheat on every move. They only get some hint at some point of the game. That makes it extremely difficult to.
Right.
That's a problem here. It's beyond computer science.
That's certainly true for the better players, isn't it? Yeah.
I would like to add a few things. First, I think we are speaking about the move bishop e4, yes, instead of queen b6, which gains a pawn. That is the first situation.
Yeah.
Then at the end of that evening, the people from Deep Blue, Murray Campbell, Feng Hishun Shu, they went to the hotel room and they figured out what happened, and they looked in the single extensions, yes. And believe it or not, but in these single extensions they found a small bug, and therefore the program did that move. It is not well known all over, but it was say a programming bug and not another one. But they were flabbergasted on that, and has nothing to do with cheating. It is only to do with good programming, and even the best programmers of the world could sometimes make mistakes, and that was the revelation here. And there was nothing else, and later on, I would say, Kasparov toned down and couldn't come up anymore with such kind of critics. So the situation is rather complex, as you understand.
Okay, thanks.
And in my eyes, in particular, the story started only after Kasparov's first complaint.
Yes.
The IBM people played politically very tricky to postpone the final decision until the match, or at least until game 5, and that was terrible for his nerves. But I hope we have opened a bottle now. Yes. Yes. You have 2 or 3 more minutes. You want to tell us something?
2 or 3 more minutes. What did I want to say? Well, I mean, as I said, Ken was on his way to this FIDE ACP anti-cheating committee meeting in Sardinia 3 weeks ago, and so he broke his trip at Heathrow and came to stay with me for 3 days. So we talked a lot about this, and it was quite an eye-opener to see how much manual work he was doing driving the computer just to analyse one case, you know. So I think we owe Ken a debt of gratitude here, because he's putting a lot of effort in, and he's highly distinguished computer scientist working on quantum computers, and he already feels that he's spending too much time being the go-to man on this anti-cheating process, when he should be doing his computer science research and all the other things he does in his life. So I think the chess community owes a lot to Ken for the work he's already putting in and continuing to put in. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
We have lunchtime now, and for those who are quick eaters, there may be the opportunity to see the playoff of the chess blitz tournament. Commodore and Shredder are shared first, and they will play.
Yesterday evening in the chess tournament.
Yes, and today after lunch and before we go to town, we can see the playoff.
And tomorrow we start at the 8:15. That's also very good.
One
So
more thing, do you know what the best strategy is before I do the
yes, that is a good question. There are some people who go with me, and then I will go. I would say pick up some more people. There are some more cars, and the bus is also a possibility. It is near the mill. It is even walkable, but then it takes say 3/4 of an hour.
Is that alright? You take it from the restart.
And I have some announcements here for this afternoon for people who have